Hello and welcome to Hub City Now. I'm your host, Tyrone Tony Reed Jr. We have another great episode for you all. I am so happy to have the guests that we have here today. They are part of an independent comic book company called Omniworld. They have some great characters. They have been at conventions, showing people their characters and telling them about their stories and selling their comic books. And they are here to finish out this year of Hub City Now with us. Gary André Bradley is a self-published writer and artist living in Jackson, Tennessee, and a huge fan of comic books and superheroes. Power G is a superhero he created years ago when he was a child, the character being a fictionalized version of himself that stems from his love of the genre. Gary would go on to create various comics with Power G as the main character for years. His nephew, Javion, I'm sorry, Javion. I told him I was going to butcher his name when we got ready to do the show. But Javion Z. Bradley is a 17-year-old junior from Jackson, Tennessee, who attends Jackson Central Mary Early College High. Finding a love for comics, manga, and anime at an early age, the young creator came up with the first draft of his manga-inspired comic. Say that. Onero. Okay, Onero, all the way back in the 7th grade, after being inspired by various science fiction stories and learning about the concept of lucid dreaming. Which, wow, that's awesome. So, without any further ado, Gary and Javion. I'm sorry, Javion. Javion. Without any further ado, here's Gary and Javion. Thank you two for being here today. We're just going to talk about your character. I just want you all to take time and tell us a little bit more about yourself, like where you went to school. Well, we know that Javion is in Jackson Central Mary Early College High, and we're going to have him talk about that. But we're going to start with Gary just to talk to us about, your schooling, what you got into. And, oh, my goodness, I didn't know that you were part of the Daily Helmsman.
Yes.
Which is so cool because I used to walk past there all the time when I was in a teen appeal. So we're going to start with you, Gary. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you from, who you are, and then we'll go to Javion.
Okay. Well, my name is Gary André Bradley. I'm from Jackson, Tennessee. I went to Jackson Central Mary, graduated class in 92. After graduation, I went to Memphis State, as it was known then, and went to school for a few years. And I left, worked for a little bit, and I returned some years later and graduated in 2008 with a BA in English with my emphasis on creative writing. When I was at Memphis State, University of Memphis, the Daily Helmsman, the school newspaper, had a few comic strips. And so I went to the offices and asked them if I could add my own strip, a comic character called Cool Catt, my humor strip, to it. They printed it like 1 or 2 times, not as much as I liked them to, but they did print it. And a few years ago, I was online and met a few friends who was big into comics and stuff like me. And I met this guy named Jay Kelly from Texas, and we got into talking about our characters. He's got a character named The Brother, and he sent me a copy of his book. And that's when I started learning about self-publishing, and that there are people out there you can send your ideas to who will print your books for you.
Right.
So that sparked me because I always wanted to have a career writing comics and everything. And I started getting back to work on Power G. And this is an updated origin of his story with the same character I created years ago, just updating him and everything. And his current first issue is out, available on Amazon and indieplanet.com. Okay. And I'm currently working on the second issue as we speak. The rough draft is finished. Second issue story is finished. I just got to get it from rough draft form to completed form.
All right.
So that's where I'm at now.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Now about the character. He's an inspiration, or he's inspired by a lot of the characters I liked as a kid growing up in the 80s and, 90s and everything. Characters like Superman, He-Man, Spider-Man, Optimus Prime, Batman, just those leader-type good guy characters was inspiring to Power G. Now, truth be told, his name originally was Super Gary.
Okay.
Because I'm a big Superman fan. And so I drew I drew the character, Super Gary, and all his adventures, stuff like that. And then later on, as I got older, your taste changed, you mature a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, I'm gonna change his name to Power Gary. So he was still Gary, but
Right.
he was Power Gary when he was in superhero form. When you're a kid, you don't think about stuff like, well, how his name gonna be Gary, and he got a secret, that kind of stuff. But as you get older, things change. So later on, I changed Power Gary to Power G.
Mm-hmm.
The G still stood for Gary, but nobody knew that's what that meant.
Right.
I'm still young, but getting older.
Right. So his secret identity is not Gary?
It is.
Oh, it is Gary. But he just goes around saying, I'm Power G.
Yeah. In that version of the story. Right. But then later on, I was like, well, okay, I can't call him Power G and the G stands for Gary. That won't make sense. And this is, like I said, me getting older. And as I'm getting older, I'm thinking, well, shoot, I want to do this for a career. Because all this time was just strictly for fun.
Right.
But when I'm getting older, I'm like, well, I love to write and everything. I would like to have this, be doing this as a career one day. And so I thought about it. I was like, how can I keep the name Power G and still use it? So I thought about it. I was like, well, what if Power G was short for the power of good?
Oh, okay.
And I built
that.
my story from that. Mm-hmm. And literally, when I changed his name to the power of good, the story sprung from me changing the name.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, okay, how can he be the power of good? I don't want people to think I'm saying it because he's better than anybody else. I'm like, okay, what if he's given this power from the forces of good?
Gotcha.
And thus when he became the power of good, because his power comes from the forces of good.
Mm-hmm.
And the origin of how that comes to be is what I'm working on right now.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That's cool. So how many issues do you think that's going to be?
I want it to be ongoing, so forever if possible.
Okay,
so,
I got you.
I want to do like specials and, collaborate with other indie creators and everything. But as far as I want it to go, I want it to be ongoing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Javion.
There we go.
Got it. Javion. All right. So Javion, tell us about you. Tell us like what your interests are right now. You're 17 years old. What is it that you're interested in, and what got you into comics?
Right now, the type of stuff that I'm interested in, aside from my book, is I'm in an early college right now, so I'm working towards getting my associate's degree.
Okay. So, and do you know what you're majoring in?
I just picked my classes for Jackson State this past week, and I was going to try to major in, like, anything art-related, like if they had anything. Right. But they said that was probably going to be extremely complicated. So my backup plan for this, like everybody always say, have a plan B if stuff don't work out. So
right.
I took this opportunity picking my classes to try to major in, like, psychology.
Okay.
Or something in that, field with, like, mental health to help, like, be a therapist so people can have somebody to talk to, because I'm always, like, that friend.
But, that would still help. I hate to cut in, but that will still help you with your comic book career, because psychology, knowing, about people and how they deal with different things, you can use that in your stories. You can talk about, there's so many issues you can talk about in your comic books and give your characters those traits and stuff, which is pretty cool. Wow. That's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome already that you're in, like, early college high. You're already talking about majorings and stuff. That's awesome. Congratulations on that. So tell us about Onero. Who is Onero? Tell us about that.
Onero is the planet. Like, that's the world that my characters end up on.
Oh, okay. So it's not a character. It's a planet called Onero. Okay.
So it starts off, this is like just like a quick summary of the first issue.
Mm-hmm.
There's this 16-year-old scientist named Oliver Harlow, and it starts 14 years in the past, like a backstory. And he's, showcasing this portal that he made, right, called the Onarian Gateway.
Okay. Does he already know about the planet? Or he knows about the planet. Okay.
So his main goal with it is to basically have it be like Earth's first form of, like, intergalactic travel, right? And his end goal with, going to this other planet is probably just, like, getting resources from it to help Earth and stuff like that, to help, just build up, like, our planet, and so both can, like, coexist while depending on each other, that type of trope, I guess.
Right.
But while he's showcasing it, it malfunctions and stuff like that, and it, overloads a few minutes later, and it blows up, basically. And from that explosion, a shockwave happened, and it stretched across all of Earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't gotten to this part yet, so it's kind of a spoiler, but some of the effects from the shockwave are like some people disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Some things like, let's say, rocks, evolved and became like crystallized. Some animals transformed, mutated, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So 14 years later, after the accident, we meet like our main character, Jabari. And his parents just so happened to have been at the showcase while the accident happened, so he kind of he lost his parents.
Oh wow.
But he was raised.
He's not a superhero unless he lost his parents or lost somebody in his family.
So he was raised by his grandma,
Mm-hmm.
like Peter Parker raised by like Aunt May, Uncle Ben.
Mm-hmm.
So he was raised by her, and he's got his best friends Adamus and Evelyn. And I like to have my symbolism because I'm religious and stuff like that.
Right.
So you've got Jabari, Adamus, and Evelyn. Adamus and Evelyn being named after Adam and Eve.
Right.
And you know how people like to play when they have like twins and stuff, which they are. So I got friends named like Jacob and Jacoby. So
Right.
that's
Right.
what I
Right.
did with them.
Right.
And like it's summer break and they need something to do. So Adam, being curious, he being like 14, watches the news for whatever reason, which Jabari gets on to him about. He's like, "Why are you watching the news? You're like 14."
Right.
So Adam, just comes out the blue. He's like, "There's these crystals that people are finding around our area, and they're selling them for a bunch of money. Let's get in on that because we have nothing else to do for summer."
Right.
So they do that, and they go out. Sneak out the house basically because their mom went on like a business trip, so she trusted them to leave the house in one piece, and not even an hour later they end up leaving the house. They find a cave and they find this ring, right? And so Adam, again, like I said, being curious, he picked the ring up and it opened a portal, right? Where did it go? Onero, of course.
Right.
So they end up on this planet and trying not to get too far into spoiler territory, they end up being confronted by like these 3 robots at the end. I call them like nanodroids.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got like this Omega logo smack dead on the chest.
Mm-hmm.
So they're part of an evil organization that's constantly trying to take over the planet and various other planets. I not labeled, but Omega and its organization is kind of inspired by like Frieza from Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
And the Frieza Force and the Beam Force and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, they do the whole like selling planets and stuff like that and taking them over. So they do that. And they're trying to get Onero, which is prevented by another organization named Alpha, which, like I said, symbolism, Alpha, Omega, the beginning, the end,
Right.
stuff like that.
Right.
So after they are confronted by these robots, somebody from Alpha swoops in and saves them, and that's how chapter 1 ends.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had to wrap the whole first arc up, because I'm never able to summarize the whole series because I never know what I want to do
Right.
after this arc.
Right.
So to basically summarize how this first arc is going to go, which I want to be no more than the first 12 chapters, is they end up on Onero, and they become a part of Alpha, and they all try to figure out how to deal with Omega whilst discovering, abilities of their own that, just kind of swoop in at the last second.
That's awesome. Can you hold your book up for us? Just kind of turn it to that camera. Here, I'm gonna make this. I'm gonna switch to another camera. There we go. It's a little shiny, but we are gonna put this online. And you drew all of this?
I did.
Wow. How long does it take you to put together a comic book? To put this comic book together?
That was a handful of months.
A handful of months.
I do remember starting like one summer, and I didn't finish until like a couple months into the school year.
Mm-hmm. And before we continue on, I'm gonna let you all see Power G.
I guess I better summarize.
Power
mine,
Gary.
too.
And I'm gonna let him summarize his book, Power Gary. Power G.
Power G. Okay, well, Jay is more manga, anime type. I'm more traditional Marvel DC type. And so that's my influence right there. So in the first issue of Power G, it starts 5 years in the past.
Okay.
It's Gary. Actually, no, it starts 18 years in the past. It's Gary and his twin sister Gina as babies. And so they're in the room sleep, and suddenly these two blue-skinned mysterious beings appear through a portal, and they take Gary. After a few minutes, they return with them. The reader doesn't know what happens. They just know that they leave and come back. Present day comes, and Gary is getting into a fight with some bullies because he always likes to stand up for other people. He don't like bullies and everything. And he thinks he's like the typical normal teenager. And him and Gina are getting ready to graduate high school. Meantime, a masked criminal helps two convicted felons escape from this prison transport. And so when they escape, the masked guy knocks one of the criminals out and leaves with him, while the other guy happens to be somebody who knows the twins because they helped put him away 5 years ago. So as Gary and Gina graduate, the parents of Gary and Gina are at like the civic center setting up for the after party, and Gary's at home alone prepping for the after party. He gets a visit from the escaped criminal that he has history with. Confronts him and shoots him. Okay. Back at the civic center, the parents and Gina are wondering where Gary is because he should have been called by now for somebody to come pick him up. And the story ends with Gary up and about, no harm, in a tunnel of light. He thinks he's dead, and he sees that proverbial, the tunnel you always see in the stories.
White light.
That's the white light, and that's how the first issue ends. So,
Does this take place in Jackson?
It takes place in the fictional city I call Greenport City.
All right.
But it is situated between Memphis and Jackson.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, it's a fictional city. And there's a reason behind the name Greenport, which I'm going to present later on.
Right.
There's a specific reason why it's called that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's cool. And if you've noticed from the covers, these characters are African American characters. Why is it important for you all to have characters in your comic books that look like you?
Well, I want kids that look like us to be able to relate to their own superheroes. As much as I love the characters like Superman and Spider-Man and Batman and all of them, they're all white. And it would be nice for some black kids to see some positive black superheroes out there that they can relate to.
Right.
Plus, I'm hoping that it inspires them to do their own stories and art and everything else.
Right.
It's a lot of good black athletes out there, a lot of good black actors out there, a lot of good black singers out there, but you don't really see a lot of black characters or superheroes or anything like that. And you don't hear a lot of like press or
when you and I were growing up around in the 80s and stuff, it was not that. I thought Brave Star was black at one time.
Yeah,
because he looked black, but he was Native American.
He had like Black Vulcan on Super Friends, stuff like that. But they were always like
really
regulated
bad.
to like
That was
side
really
characters
bad.
or background characters and everything.
And there was a lot of black exploitation, like Luke Cage back in the 70s and 60s and stuff.
I want our kids to know that they can be leaders too. They can be in charge too. You know,
right? And I think some comic book companies have done a good job in presenting that fact. Most recently, Miles Morales, has like boomed. It's like ridiculous how many people, like from all ages and background, have like just grabbed on to Miles Morales, Puerto Rican and African American. Static Shock. There's so many. Luke Cage got his own TV show finally. We've seen Black Panther. That was huge. Yes. I still remember going to a Marvel like show in Mississippi a couple of years ago, and there was an Asian kid dressed as Black Panther. There was a white kid dressed as Black Panther. There was a black kid dressed as Black Panther, and all these kids didn't care that he was black. They just thought he was a cool character.
Exactly.
And that's why I created my own superhero characters, Angelo and Angeline for Solad, is because like you said, I want other kids, who are black, to see that they can be heroes, they can be leaders, they can see stories and tales about themselves also, and how important it is. Because, I mean, even though we watched He-Man and She-Ra and all of them, I mean, we watched them because we liked the heroes. We didn't care what color they are.
Right.
And we don't, and my other hope is that people from other races will embrace these characters and say, I don't care what color they are. The story's interesting.
Right. I want little black girls and black girls to love the stories, but I also want kids, like you said, of other colors to love them too, because it's an all-encompassing thing.
Right.
You know?
Right.
You know. And that really is one of the reasons why I chose the name Omniworld Comics.
Tell us about that.
Okay. It's specific. If you look at the word, the way I got it, I've got a hyphen, okay? That hyphen represents a particular phrase that you could go with the rest of the statement. Omni is another word for all.
Okay.
Okay? So when I was trying to think of the name of my company, I was like, what can I think of that's going to really summarize what I want to do and how I feel? So you take the hyphen and you can put any phrase in place of that hyphen, replace Omni with all, and you got, I want all of me and Jay's characters to be loved around the world.
Right.
I want all of my favorite characters to meet me and Jay's characters in the world. You know, I want our books to be known all around the world. I want my favorite actors in the world to star
to be in those movies and TV shows.
You know, yeah. So
right. So
any phrase that you can get the word all of related to our comics, you know, for what I want this to accomplish with this, you know, it's what I chose the name for.
That's awesome. That is so awesome. Like we said, it's very important to have these characters out there and to tell these stories, especially from our perspective, because for so long there were just white guys writing stories about black people, and those characters were singing things like Jive Turkey and Sweet
dialogue,
Christmas. You know, they only knew what they saw on television, the blaxploitation movies.
Yeah,
and
if you go back
things.
and look at how Sam Wilson really was back in the day, he was like, snapping Sam Wilson, something like that. He was like a pimp or something, the way he talked and everything. Far cry from what you see in the MCU.
Right. So. But and again, you bring up Sam Wilson, and now he's Captain America for the MCU. I mean, these characters have come a long way from what they were first created to be. And I want to shout out the late Dwayne McDuffie and so many other people with, oh man, it's escaping my mind right now. What was it called? Oh my goodness, Milestone
yeah,
Comics.
Me and Jay met Christopher Priest. When
Oh, really?
Yeah,
oh,
he's one of the founders of Milestone. And I actually talked to Dwayne McDuffie online before.
Okay.
Yeah, I would message him on Facebook back when Facebook had like the little instant messaging thing, and he would respond back to me. And
oh wow!
And I've been trying to find those conversations and everything, but I guess they got wiped out or anything. That would have been like a nice archive. Or
it's got to be in there somewhere. You got to go back and look at your messages.
Yeah.
You got to go back. But that's awesome, man. I mean, because he really inspired me, and all those people really inspired me because they really wanted to start their own characters like Icon and Rocket and Hardware, the Blood Syndicate, Static Shock. Static Shock got a cartoon. They've been talking about movies for a long time.
And I want to see a Static and Miles crossover.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I don't know what
that'd be
they're
awesome.
waiting on. And I'm not the only person who feels this way. You know, they missing out on some money doing that.
Yeah. But there's so many of those characters out there now, and they're getting better. They're not where they should be.
Right.
Like Misty Knight is one of the African American women. We really didn't get like superheroes, like actual African American television superheroes until the 90s. Do you remember who the first ones were?
Let me see.
Some people say it's Mantis, but it's not Mantis.
Yeah, I remember Mantis.
It was the Power Rangers.
Oh yeah, with Zach
and Aisha were the first. They were the first black superheroes. And Tanya. They were the first black superheroes that we ever had on live action television.
Yeah, and Zach led once and always the Ranger reunion.
Yeah, so it's that's so important to see those moments where it's like, I could be that person. I could be
Right.
one of those characters on television. I could be one of those characters in the comic book.
Positive role model.
And I love how Stan Lee used to put that about Spider-Man. You don't have to know who's under the mask. It could be anybody. It could be a man. It could be a woman.
Yep.
As long as they're a hero, as long as they're doing.
And I'm glad they promoted that in the first Into the Spider-Verse movie because it was like anyone can wear the mask.
That's right. That's right. And one of the we're gonna have to wrap up soon. I hate that we got to wrap up
We can talk
about this all day. That's right. But one of the things in the movies that came out this summer in 2023, all the movies this summer was about belonging.
Yeah.
We had a Black Little Mermaid.
Yep.
We had Into the Spider-Verse. I mean, we had Across the Spider-Verse, the part 2, the Miles Morales story. We had Transformers.
Yep.
We had the Ninja Turtles, and the main theme in all those movies was I want to belong.
Right. Sure.
I'm
was.
important. I'm somebody.
It sure was.
Look at me. I'm important. I'm just as important as you.
That's right.
I can make a difference just as much as you can, even if I look different. For the Turtles, we're turtles.
Right. Yeah.
For Miles,
But they got that
I'm a
family
black
bond.
Spider-Man. You keep telling me that I'm a black Puerto Rican
That's why
Spider-Man.
one of my favorite
you say
parts
I
of
don't.
that movie was when he said, everybody keep telling me how my story's gonna go.
Right.
Nah, I'm gonna do my own thing.
Right,
You know,
right,
that was
right,
my favorite
right,
part
right.
of that movie.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was like, oh man, I
Yeah.
feel that. I feel it. In Transformers, the same thing. This Hispanic character is like, I belong. I'm somebody. I can do this. So we all feel that way. We've all felt that way for years.
Yep.
We've always wanted to see ourselves on movies and TV shows,
Yep.
and that's why we pour out to go see Black Panther
Right.
and Part 2, which
That
is so
was
hard to
an
watch.
experience right
Yeah,
there.
it was-
You remember
I mean-
me and you saw each other at
At the theater. So yeah. But before we go, I want to give you all time to tell people where they can find out more information about your characters, where they can go online.
I just want to say one more thing
Go ahead.
about both of our books.
Go ahead.
Now, we discussed this, me and Jay, my nephew here,
I know where you're from.
and we discussed whether or not Onero and Power G were in the same universe. Right now, they're not.
Okay.
We're gonna do a crossover one day.
One day.
and I think Image Comics might have done this before, but the plan is to showcase the different like worlds. We're probably gonna have it set up to where like when my characters appear on stage, the art is done by me, but when Jay's characters appear in the story, the art is done by him. So you might have some of his characters talking to my
that's
characters
cool.
with the two different art styles,
That's
kind of
cool.
reflect the whole different Earths multiverse thing because
That's
the
awesome.
multiverse is pretty big right now.
Right.
So,
All right. So where can they go? I know we're running out of time, and I'll put the links up on our website. But where's the main place that they can go to find out?
OmniWorldComics.com. OMNI-worldcomics.com. And
right.
on there, you can go to the comics page, and you'll see Jay's links on there. It'll say My Comics or Comics, one of them. And then my social media links are like on the main page at the bottom. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. We've got the Omniworld Comics channel on YouTube. But everything can be found under OmniWorldComics.com.
All right. Thank you all so much, Gary André Bradley.
Oh, can I say one more thing, Tony?
Go ahead.
As far as our books, they're both on Amazon and indieplanet.com. INDY planet.com.
All right. Are you done, Gary?
Yes,
No,
sir.
but thank you all so much for being on the show, Gary Andre Bradley and Javion. Javion. I'm sorry. See, I keep butchering it. Javion. I have it written down on the piece of paper. Javion. I downed it myself. Javion Bradley. Thank you all so much for being here today.
Yeah.
You all go out and check Omniworld Comics out. Power G and Onero. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you all for tuning in.
Yes.
Before we go, I wanted to. This is the last episode of the year. We're going to replay this episode. If you didn't get to see it from the beginning, it will be played or hear it from the beginning. You'll get to hear it again next Sunday as we wrap up this year. But before we go, I wanted to offer my condolences to the family of Marvin Dunn Polly. He was a guest on this show a couple of years ago. He was always, a staunch supporter of schools and education and kids learning. And he passed away Saturday, December 10th. So we're praying for him and his family. Thank you to our sponsors, R&R Custom Wheels Tires Express and Baskerville Funeral Home. We hope you all have a wonderful and blessed Christmas. Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas Eve today, but Merry Christmas to you tomorrow. And have a happy new year. We'll see you in 2024. Make sure you check out Omniworld Comics, Power G, and Oniro. Thank you to Gary and Javion for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Take care. Have a wonderful and blessed week. Take care of one another. Watch out for one another. And God bless.